Welcome everybody to Bitcoin Live on the Sunday afternoon in Holland. It is an evening, morning, wherever you are. Hello, Steve. Hello, Fry. Johnny is also on his way. He'll probably join later. How are you guys?
Wonderful.
Doing well, man. I mean, I know there's a lot of different things going on in the world, right? Like a lot of people are down about the price action recently and stuff like that. But what I'm experiencing in my neck of the woods is a lot of builder activity, a lot of excitement, a lot of progress and shipping coming down the line. So I'm doing great as far as with what we're doing with our project and just what I'm experiencing in the Bitcoin and stacks development side of things is great.
Yeah, this is the time for builders. I think Johnny is also there. We can't see or hear you, Johnny. So you might have to look into that.
Yeah, I'll
there
work
you
that
are.
out.
There he is.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get my camera rolling. Give me a bit.
No problem. So this is kind of fun actually because I'm Bitcoin centric. I think most of you guys are. But let's say I'm a Bitcoiner in a way. And then we got Steve here, who is of course also a Bitcoiner, but also a Stacks representative. Then we got Fry over here, who's actually has a background in Stellar, XLM. And we got, of course, Johnny from Digibyte. So we got like 4 different chains represented here, which is kind of fun. And but we're also here to announce something really cool, a new show on Bitcoin Live and DeOrganized, which will be run by our guest here, Fry. So Fry, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what your show will be about?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, I'm kind of a strange guy. I mean, for quite a bit, I've stayed in the darkness, hiding behind the face of Tom Ripley and various other characters that I've been on X, and using things on my profile like they, them to confuse the hell out of people as to who this guy is or woman or whoever the hell, like who's saying these things. Do they even have any business in this space, and the whole intention that I've always had is I didn't want people to be too focused on me as a person, but what we are contributing to in the space, right? Because, as an anarcho-capitalist, as someone who tends to reject collectivism, I'm very much into the individual and the freedom of people to be individuals unless they violate the non-aggression principle. But what you see in Bitcoin and the greater realm of decentralized finance is you see a bunch of individuals who are able to rely on their individual strengths to support something that's bigger than themselves. And so in my view, what this show is going to be about that I would like to do every Sunday with you guys, typically at 3 p.m. Central European time, or 4 p.m. for our next show, which will be our AMA with Lumexo to kick everything off, is rather than focus on the traditional aspects, the technical nuances of blockchain and this boring stuff that can make people who are normies kind of fall asleep or think that, I'm just going to stick with the banks because I understand that. I know what it means to load a debit card with money and use it in a store or whatever it might be. I want to really talk about why people are doing this, why it should translate. What are the things that defy our expectations of what decentralized finance can be? And that's why this show is called DeFi Expectations. It's about just that. It's about literally breaking your expectations of what you expect this little blockchain world can be. And for me personally, over the past year, I've been really defying expectations for myself of what the world could be. I was a person who was fearful of ever traveling. I became even agoraphobic at one point, became intensely sick and almost died. And after overcoming all those different adversities in my life, including a separation from my partner, I basically just realized that I needed to go out and see the world and actually explore and discover is everybody like this who I've been surrounding myself with, or is the world a little bit bigger? And besides just discovering that from one place at home and meeting all these interesting people in decentralized finance and blockchain, I'm actually starting to see the world and travel, not just for business, but for personal reasons as well. And reporting right now from a hotel room in in Berlin. So, well, actually, it's Königs. Let me see, Königs Wusterhausen. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a very quaint town just outside of Berlin in Germany, and I'm here to meet some people and have a good time. So yeah, I'm hoping to bring some of that fun onto the show, not just make it strictly about like decentralized finance, but it's we talk a lot about bridging assets across other networks, but to me, it's about bridging people. It's about how to connect with people who may come from different backgrounds, different belief systems, et cetera, and figure out what it is that we have in common and maybe how this technology can bring us together.
That sounds terrific to me, and I'm looking forward to producing those shows with you. Will be a lot of fun, I think, and I always learn a lot of stuff from different people. So I'm looking forward to get my expectations challenged and expanded through your new show. Yeah, so you got a very interesting background. Maybe we can start there. You mentioned like you're an anarcho-capitalist, right?
Yes, that's correct. And I've always kind of had trouble, at least initially, kind of finding my place politically. I started out, yeah, and I started out when I was 17. I was like a rave promoter, so I was around a lot of liberal people, and I still carry a lot of those values. The idea that we should be able to express ourselves how we want, and as long as we're not again like infringing on someone's right to do the same, and that's always been my belief system. And at different times in my life, at one point I supported Bernie Sanders, you know what I mean? Democratic socialist, people call him a commie, but, and I had a friend who I was really close with, who still have that friend who's an anarcho-communist. He's actually protesting in the No Kings protest that happened. I think it's yesterday now. I still get mixed up on the time zones, but like that's kind of like the groups that I came from, the people that I was around all the time. But I also noticed like when I'd have discussions with people often about what I felt, because I was a party promoter, right? And I like the freedom to be able to charge for tickets what I want, run my show the way I wanted to. I didn't want somebody who I rented a venue from changing the deal and cutting my capacity because of a stupid fire marshal that didn't understand what we were doing or tried to act like we were doing something dangerous or something like that. So and then I'd have these discussions with people, and sometimes it would kind of rub them the wrong way. Like, are you really with us? Or are you some kind of greedy capitalist? And I just thought, well, isn't the idea of capitalism to create value? Isn't the idea of being successful and continuing to work doing what you love reliant on you making money doing what you love so that you can produce more fun experiences for everyone else? I mean, that's kind of the way I saw it. But sometimes those values kind of put me at odds with certain people. But once I kind of got into blockchain, which was, 5 years ago during DeFi summer, I kind of took my marketing background. I was working in, because, after raves and stuff, I kind of transitioned into digital marketing. I had a child and stuff. I kind of thought, you can't be popping ecstasy pills and throwing parties all the time anymore. You got to be a little bit serious now that you have a kid, or you're going to be setting a really bad example, right? So I met a friend after the Air Force. We got into digital marketing together, building websites. And then eventually I was doing kind of like a niche focus on like the medical industry with like a focus on regenerative medicine or stem cells. Well, during the COVID pandemic, as you might imagine, wasn't really the best time for people to be investing in experimental procedures to maybe try to live forever with stem cell infusions, or let's say you actually had pain in your shoulder or something, you know what I mean? And you haven't had help with traditional therapies. Well, maybe stem cells can work, maybe they can't, but am I really going to spend $5,000 shooting some stem cells into my shoulder when we're in the middle of a freaking pandemic, Right. So it didn't really make sense for me to focus on the same thing anymore. So I had really been hearing about this movement of decentralized finance. I started working with a local influencer in the space who was producing podcasts and stuff regularly. And I really like taking his podcast and clipping out the best parts to kind of like show people the highlights of when you talk to somebody, and not just not just like get into the technical details, the bullshit people don't care about, like how this functions, but like why are you doing this? You know what I mean? And even like having like spiritual discussions with people from like why you're in finance, however you will. But like just discussions that you wouldn't typically have. And from that, me investing in various DeFi protocols, getting involved with Badger DAO. And, you know, I had serious projects like that I worked with and did marketing with. I worked with a project called Geode Finance, which was basically like kind of creating a white label Lido finance for DAOs to leverage for ETH staking. Because, you know, I was pretty much an ETH maximalist, and coming from my liberal background, it was always kind of proposed to me that Ethereum and this proof of stake movement was the way it was supposed to be, because Bitcoin's, it's not efficient in terms of energy, it's not green, all these things, you know, that I didn't understand at the time fully. Yeah. But I also, you know, the idea of digital gold versus ultrasound money, as you will, that people like Bankless would say, and the idea of smart contracts, this promise of like a DeFi future that was made to us 3,000 years ago by the Ethereum Foundation, and watching how they tried to make this happen, tried to make it successful, but really at the end of the day, it never really fully was realized. It never exactly became what it was. But I became introduced to so many people who were so liberty-minded, especially with Badger DAO, because their thing was bringing Bitcoin to DeFi, right? So you'd stake Bitcoin in these different convoluted smart contracts to, at the end result, end up earning some Badger token, right? And I had been onboarded by trading wrapped BTC. I earned an airdrop. I started helping them with marketing and got super involved. But I still didn't really, like, coming back to your question, I still didn't fully like have a place. It's just like I had these beliefs of liberty and stuff, but I didn't really know like where my ethos aligned, or that there were other people exactly like me. It was just like I talked to one group, not really fit in, talk to another. It's like, you're just too free. We don't understand where you fit in. But then I started working with a meme coin project called Malay Token, you know, and based around Javier Malay, and this political badass who comes out with a fucking chainsaw, and he's going to cut down excessive government waste, you know, and save Argentina from the ravages of socialism. Like, who the hell is this guy, right? And I kind of came to the table initially hearing that he was kind of like, you know, I guess Trump really liked him and everything. So I thought, oh, he must be very much like Trump. I don't know if I'll like him, because, you know, I've come to respect elements of Trump later in my life, but initially with like my liberal friends and stuff, he didn't particularly rub me the right way. But I started to actually read books that like Malay would recommend if you were trying to get into like libertarianism and anarcho-capitalism. One that specifically sat very well with me was called Anarchy, State, and Utopia. And it literally breaks down a society that starts from what's called a state of nature. And you could come to a state of nature in any kind of sense, but basically it's a world without government, a society without government. You could say, well, biblically, Adam and Eve, after they left the garden, you could say a bunch of humans, and the government's fallen, and we're just trying to find
classic social contract theoreticians, right? Like Thomas Hobbes and John Locke and Rousseau. The big ones. Mm-hmm. And the modern ones are John Rawls, of course, is a very famous one.
Yeah, and it was just a really interesting way that they kind of build from the ground up into how society forms. And one of the things that really sat well with me is it gave me a code that didn't just make me feel like I was defying authority anymore. It talked about the definition of a state. And a lot of people don't know what the definition of a state is, but it's basically,
many people know very little of definitions in general.
Yeah, exactly. People don't understand
fluid,
you know, and so I learned that a state has a monopoly on violence. That is what a state is. It is, you have what is called dominant protective agencies that form. So you could think like your local sheriff, and then you have Bonnie and Clyde going from state to state and now suddenly crossing these invisible lines. We have no jurisdiction here. We need the FBI to go pursue them, right? So that's your bigger dominant protective agency. And then whether or not the people support them or not and everything,
Well,
you've got your state that kind of forms.
I'm not sure. Do you know what's his name? David Graeber, I think his name is, the anthropologist. He wrote the first 5,000 years of debt. And he also wrote a really cool little book, more like an essay. It was posthumously released, like the Pirate Enlightenment, where he sort of argues that the pirates in the 16th and 17th century sort of inspired the Enlightenment in Europe, the stories that came over. But in the book, The First 5,000 Years of Debt, he argues, in contrast to many others, including Safedin Ammous in the Bitcoin Standard, that the first societies that we know of from anthropology and ethnography were actually credit-based and not barter-based, as is often claimed. So barter was like a very rare occasion where systems really malfunction, or where you have enemy groups and they have to sort of communicate and transact with each other. But in most early societies, it was actually credit that came first and money came later. And what I wanted to say actually is he has a very interesting idea about where money actually came into the equation. And he says it was a function of the state. So the state introduced money in order to pay its military, because the military, to expand and sort of control its empire, they had to have something that you could exchange anywhere within the empire and to tie the military to the state. So money, gold coins, silver coins, coins in general were sort of military in origin. So that sort of runs counter to many of the classic theories that say first you have barter and then you sort of money is like an original first. Let's say money came before credit, and credit is actually like a fiat invention. So, but he argued the other way around. That's actually credit that came first, and fiat came later. So, Safedin Ammous, in his book, the Bitcoin Standard, he uses the group in Micronesia who use those rice stones, right? Those big rice stones, which are sort of like public ledgers, and everybody sort of acknowledges what everybody owns. And those rice stones, those big, very rare, difficult to create rare rice stones, they sort of are those public ledgers. Ledger keeping, he says, in
the original blockchain.
Yeah, this pyramid is sort of encapsulates and is Bitcoin, right? In his argument, but it perfectly fits what David Graeber is saying. Like those rice stones, and actually Bitcoin itself is also like a public ledger, right? So actually, you can sort of merge the David Graeber argument that ledgers or credit, public ledger keeping, came first, and that Bitcoin combines the best of both worlds, and of course other blockchains too, right? The decentralized blockchains like Stacks is another one, of course, that's built on Bitcoin. But I would also say Digibyte and Decred, and I think you would argue Stellar too. So it's very interesting where those two things meet. Like anyway, so what I wanted
I would suggest, and I'm not as probably as studied as Nick is on the subject, but just thinking about this now, and I've never really thought about it in this way. But it probably makes sense that credit came about from the barter system because you didn't always have an equal exchange, so you had to keep a record of who contributed what, where, and what they might be owed down the line, or what shared resources they have access to because they produced enough grain and whatnot. And then money came along because it was really hard to pay soldiers in grain, everyone carrying around grain and all of that. That's probably kind of like how that all broke down.
It makes sense too, kind of what you said about it coming out as like money through the sense of like a military, because that really tracks of like what I'm talking about with the state and having a monopoly on violence. You need some way to fund these protective agencies
to blind them to you. Right?
And the state, there's a nuance. There's a nuance there. The state has a monopoly on the authorized use of force to compel.
And the authorized.
You can wage violence as as well as the state, or in the same capacity. You have the capacity to choose violence, but you don't have the authorization to execute on that choice and not have the repercussions. The state has an authorization, has a monopoly on instigating force and violence without any repercussion.
Yeah.
Correct. I think
Negative
a monopoly
feeling.
on violence, meaning we get all the benefits of violence without the punishments of doing so, and maybe not having to have authority from the lessers if, maybe some people don't agree with how we exercise that right, or how we use taxes.
But the state also has this other authorization, right? To issue money, right? So they are the only ones that can issue money officially, plus, like you say, taxes. But you remember the speech that was Bukele held in I think it was a GOP convention, and then he sort of made the point, which is kind of obvious when you sort of think about it, is like, why do we even need taxes? Because they can print the money out of the air, and the debt is so large that even if you increase taxes to 100%, you could still not pay back the debt, right? So why are we even paying those taxes in the first place? And the answer is, of course, because the state has the monopoly of violence, issues money to pay the military. You need taxes from the people in order to make them accept the money that you
pledge
issue,
allegiance. Right? It's a pledge of allegiance.
And then the soldiers can buy stuff from the people.
It makes it real. It makes it real. It's like that video I watched recently with Jeff Booth, because, I told you guys I started out as an Ethereum maximalist. I really started to realize how decentralized finance wasn't operating the way it was supposed to, and how even this like Stellar that I've started to work with Lumexo, right? I started to really realize how this DeFi future was actually being promised by someone entirely different, like Stellar community, right? Like actually able to give this like 5 to 8 second finality on transactions, gas fees under a penny. I mean, come on, that's the DeFi world you want right there and then. But once I started to look a little bit outside of that, I took another look at Bitcoin and really realized, like, not just how it can be leveraged to actually solve energy problems, not create them. It's not like this wasteful use of energy that we tend to think of, right? But it's also like the greater ethos of what's being said when you invest in Bitcoin, right? It's actually it's an understanding that basically, if you really get Bitcoin on a deeper level, you're rejecting this kind of state belief in perpetual debt. This idea that every dollar that you use is basically debt you owe back, and because of the interest, you can never really pay it back. And that's how they kind of keep you a slave to this monetary system that you can't win in, right? And if you realize this, if you realize that an actual free market, like a libertarian society of free markets with minimal government intervention, that if this were the way, it actually should be deflationary. Yep. I mean, that to me was like mind-blowing, because a lot of people think that what we experienced in America, or what I experienced, I guess people are still experiencing. I talk about it in past tense because I consider myself like a citizen of the world now, but what my friends and family are still going through is this idea almost, that capitalism is bad because look at what's going on. Look at how people are so greedy, these greedy billionaires, and what they're doing in countries. Like, greedy billionaires are actually manipulating government to hurt people more. My parents understand this, but they're all, my friends and some of my other members, in my extended family, not so much. They don't get it. They're confused. And then they're torn left and right, but both of them are playing into the same agenda, and right where they're losing is their money system. I'm like, don't you feel the pot being turned up? I mean, don't you realize every day that you go buy milk and it's a little bit more expensive than it was before? I mean, and you can't even get out of the grocery store without spending a few $100s. It's insane, right? And it's worse for people depending on where you live. You could own your house outright. You could have found a way to avoid all your taxes. You could still go poor just going to the grocery store if you're not careful, So.
But the good news for them is that capitalism is dead. It was sort of buried like 20 or 30 years ago. So
that's right.
So they don't have to worry about it.
They've not experienced it in quite some time.
Exactly.
Stakeholder capitalism, and that's exactly what Ethereum tried to recreate in the DeFi world.
Yeah. And I basically I also agree with you, Steve, with the barter and the credit, because they basically move in tandem, those two things. But it's usually credit, public ledger keeping by the community in order to keep track of what everybody owes, and also debt jubilees, right? Because the debt jubilees were like a very ancient principle, which stems from sort of a public credit system. But of course, when it sort of breaks down, or in different occasions, or in local communities, you also had barter, of course. But yeah, that's an aside. How are you, Johnny?
I think I'm good now. I think I might have got the gremlins out of the system and ready to roll. Appreciate hearing from Fry. Certainly can hear a lot of fundamental truth in what you're saying there, Fry, and can relate directly to kind of your journey as well. Love acknowledging, right, that when the children came about, things kind of maybe changed perspective a little bit. I think it's a very paternalistic sort of instinct there that we all go through as we try to figure out what sort of world we're going to leave behind to the next generation, and we truly consider that in earnest. And then how are we participating in the marketplace, and then what our role is, because we are individuals, but collectively what we do will be where we're going.
I agree. I mean, people will say things like ignorance is bliss. I've never felt that, to me, like walking into a situation stupid scares the hell out of me relative to like knowing what I'm about to deal with. But there was a kind of innocence during that time, like even back throwing raves and stuff like that, where it was like, you have all these idealistic visions of what things are supposed to be, but you have a child, you realize what reality is, and that like you can lose your kid, like people can die if you're not responsible, if you don't make the right decisions. It's very much a wake-up call, and it makes you want to analyze what kind of world you're creating, for sure. Like, how are you contributing positively or negatively to government? Are you actually helping people take your rights away? Are you creating debt for your children in the future to try to inherit? Are you making a world where they're going to be able to provide for themselves, to have work and not be dependent on other people, to not feel like, oh, my job was taken away by an immigrant or by AI or whatever the monster is today that we're supposed to hate or blame for our own ability to provide for ourselves. The truth is, at the end of the day, nothing is promised to you from the moment that you're alive. I mean, and nobody is required to come save you. I mean, I had kind of a revelation last year, and I believe in like a higher power or something, but I also recognize that at the end of the day, the responsibility is my own, to actually take care of myself and my own, as well as my family.
You are the Calvary.
Yes, I'm the one that's going to come save me at the end of the day. And if I can't do it, I can't expect that someone else will. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't align with people of like minds and do what we can to look out for each other. That is important as well. But everyone has to carry their weight.
That's where I say network states are far more powerful than nation states into the future.
Absolutely. And Steve, as a father, do you agree with?
Oh, of course. And to what Johnny just said, network states, that's what we're establishing right now. And it's not, I like to take an approach where I'm not a Zen Buddhist, but I like the idea of transcend and include, right?
Yeah.
We're not toppling governments. We're not looking to have a conflict. We're just evolving how we interact and organize society. And it makes sense that we would create these. We use the term network state because states is what we're used to, but it's really just an organizational structure that people are going to belong to. And if I am a father of 7, I'm down to 2 in the house. I have successfully migrated 5 adult children to being successful, self-sustaining, don't really rely on me for much. And a lot of that is in letting them learn their lessons and do things their way and not dictating to them how to do things. And right now, the paradigm is people are reliant on the state for the reason people take an opposition to capitalism is because they think that it usurps the state from being able to take care of them. When and don't get me wrong, I do think the biggest problem is that when people build up these massive amounts of wealth, our current governing structures allow them undue influence on that process. That's not capitalism. That's big government. That's the problem of centralized, highly overpowered government, and it being a tool to be used by people with more resources than and to the interest of those specific people rather than the whole. You know, a national government should be nationalist in nature. That's what makes sense, right? But it shouldn't be hyper nationalism to the point of fascism. That's not what anyone really wants, except for some of these people that might be able to wield that as a tool. So yes, I agree with the idea that we do need to have these things more decentralized, and what's really missing from the process right now is consent. There's no consent. If you cannot actually withdraw from the process, you can't abstain and not
That's right.
be beholden to the outcomes, then you don't actually have any consent. So there's no consent in the governing process right now. It's all just, you live here, you're a subject, and that's
wild,
it.
right?
And all of us participate in this process of acting against other people's consent because, oh, it's the left government now, it's the right government. We don't care about the other side.
Right. The other side's immoral, so it doesn't. So it's okay for us to just not to disregard their consent.
Wild.
Correct. I mean, take the left, for example. They'll talk about things like we need to raise taxes for the uber rich because clearly we're entitled to some benefit from their success, right? Or it's the big corporations against us who are unruly and unfair. Well, the big corporations leverage big government to make things better for themselves. They're the state is what actually enforces monopolies. It doesn't break them up. And every time any kind of Democrat comes into office and raises taxes, if you're smart and you realize this, right? You understand, you've talked to a couple rich people, you realize very quickly that oftentimes the tax system isn't really even the root of the issue if you were even trying to go after the rich people. The uber rich take out loans.
Right. They don't, right. Their income isn't taxable anyway.
Never.
Yeah, exactly. They could be pulling in billions, but they keep it unrealized and they take loans against it constantly, and they never fully pay back the loan. They take out another loan. They know how to do it so that they don't have to pay tax. What you're doing is you're giving the state more permission to take your money away. It's ridiculous. Right. For a broken process that basically they redistribute some wealth from people who are already fucking poor and then put them into processes that don't work, that are redistributed by people looking out for their own interests more than you. And the programs don't work. I mean, I think it's Milton Friedman that said if government programs were judged like businesses, they would be more successful or they wouldn't exist. You don't judge them based on their intentions. Oh, we can't get rid of this program. It's meant to cure homelessness, or it's meant to stop drug addiction or cure cancer.
They don't have to be profitable.
Well,
they don't have
yeah, or even good at what they do. It could be an anti-war movement and it creates more war. That don't do, what is it? Just Say No campaign. I feel like that created more drug addicts. Look at what happened with Dare.
I absolutely believe.
I think,
you know what? Go ahead, Johnny. I don't want to. I know you have something valuable to say here.
Well, let's hope I can live up to that. But
I'm sorry.
I think fundamentally, it kind of goes back to something Fry said earlier, and I know we've all talked about at various points, in that we're giving up the individual spirit in all of this, right? We're not taking responsibility for our community, the people that we have influence on in our lives, our family unit, and we're hoping that somebody else will do the work, right? We're trusting that if we submit to this governance, that there will be some sort of better outcome. And I think fundamentally, it's not some sort of like hopium belief system. I think truly it is people don't want to be responsible for their lives, and they've kind of been tricked into this that they're not powerful, that they aren't capable, and that they should trust the experts and trust the science and all sorts of other idioms that have been put in there that essentially tricks people into becoming willing slaves to the system, right? And so this whole system perpetuates. And what we're talking about is trying to actually give agency to individuals, right? That's why crypto kind of came into being, to give agency to individuals to be able to assert themselves in a free and clear marketplace, right? And so I just, it's bigger than taxation. Unfortunately, taxation happened as a result of this gradual erosion of self, an individual, and the idea that we can develop into fully functioning humans and function as a community and actually make decisions in the best interest of one another.
Yeah. We're trying to reverse that process, or at least rebalance it. Because
self-agency is actually key. It's that's really the problem right now. We don't have everyone. We've all been trained to, like you said, we're kind of been trained to offload our responsibility for managing our society to others.
Yeah, we just vote. And everything will get better.
That's all I got to do is vote. I just got to vote the right color. We have two options. Obviously, that's all that we need.
Well, I mean,
we only have two choices to solve a problem, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's also like, it seems like too much for people to take on, like economics, for example. You think about how complicated all this stuff is, but like I literally read a book, and like just starting with Anarchy, State, and Utopia, and where I went from that, I was like, it's really not that complicated. No. They make it complicated. They use these confusing terms because they don't want you to.
They don't want you participating. You're not an expert, and we also have the authority to determine who's an expert for you.
Correct. That's how they got away with what they did during COVID as well. Think about this, like my soon-to-be ex-wife, okay, she had gotten the COVID shot, right? And I did too, all right? And I got it because she had COPD. I didn't want her to get sick. I stayed at home all the time. This was during my blue phase, as I call it, back when I was like agoraphobic. I wasn't going out very much, but I still got the shot. I got the jab because I wanted to protect my wife in the event that I somehow got it. I wouldn't get her sick because she was an at-risk person, right? So we both got our shots. And I was inside of the CVS, right? And they tell you to wait for like 15 minutes or something to make sure that you don't have some kind of reaction. I started to feel uncomfortable, and I said, I think we need to go home. She's like, well, that's the opposite. If like you're not feeling well, you need to stay here. And I like went up to go use the bathroom because I didn't want to make a big scene. And I just like collapsed. Like I literally fell onto the floor. Like I kind of jellied and caught myself because I'm used to, from my drug days, catching myself when I fall, but like I still like fell on the freaking ground. And they brought like I think the fire department showed up, and they're like checking me out and stuff. And I was okay, but like I literally fainted like right after getting the first shot, And I talked to her about this. I said, wasn't that like a COVID reaction, like a COVID shot reaction, like a side effect or something? Like, that's a little bit weird, isn't it? She said, oh, don't believe those conspiracy theories. I'm like, I just fell on the ground like right after the shot. What the hell are you talking about? Oh, you were nervous, you were unsure because of the propaganda you were reading. Just don't worry about it. A fucking week later, she had gotten the jab too. A week later, her face blew. Like, have you heard of this term Bell's palsy? Mm-hmm. I didn't know it until I saw it happen to my wife. Her fucking face, she's like two-faced, like one face, like other face, like down, like it was insane. And I was like, sweetheart, like you just got the shot like a week ago. You've never had this happen to you in your life, and your face is like paralyzed on one side. And no, it's not that. Like she couldn't even fucking talk. Like I'm like, this is insane. Like you don't even recognize like what's happening right in front of you. You know what I mean? And you're watching the media, right? And these people are fucking pushing this bullshit all the time. And she's listening to goddamn TikTok every day. And I was just like, my fucking God, like this was my side. I used to be a liberal. What the fuck happened? What the fuck happened?
I could tell based on how, as soon as they start telling you can't talk about any kind of negative consequences about this. You can't hold any kind of contrary opinion because it's dangerous for society. Right then and there, that they're full of shit. They're pushing an agenda and they don't want any pushback. And if they get pushback, their shit doesn't hold water. Because if it did, why would they care about the pushback? It's easy to marginalize. The whole thing is obvious on its face. And by the way, there's a lot of young women that are probably going to have a hard time getting pregnant for the rest of their lives.
But also,
they sterilized a lot of people in this process.
to try.
I believe that's possible too. I mean, it's a little personal, but we were trying to have a baby a little while after this, and we couldn't. But it was kind of a good thing because we ended up separating anyway. Our ideologies were so far apart. But and also, I just to briefly touch into this, it's not just like COVID or the fact that like, oh, these people they're well intentioned, but they need immunity by the government. That's kind of funny. And Fauci, we're going to grant him a fucking pardon when he didn't even do anything wrong, right? I mean, how fucking stupid is that shit, right? But it tracks to like the rest of the healthcare industry. I almost died, basically. I was like emaciated. I was skinnier than I am now. I wasn't eating. My stomach was having all kinds of problems. I couldn't digest food. I couldn't taste anymore. I couldn't even feel practically, okay? Water didn't even taste right to me. Nothing was correct. And I went to see a doctor. They tried to figure it out. They didn't ask me one time, what are you eating? What kind of diet are you on? If you try to gut reset plan
Why
or
would
something.
they do that?
Of course, we just need to give you a pill, or why don't we get a colonoscopy for you? You're 36, but we think it's time for a colonoscopy. I skipped the procedure, okay? I ended up trusting my AI. It gave me a diet plan. I was better within a month. It's just the food I was eating was wrong. My friend pointed out to me, we were at East Denver. I was talking to him about like just having trouble just shitting and stuff. And he's just like, because we're open with each other and stuff. He's like, buddy, like you're not eating right at all. Like the food you're eating when you're eating is garbage, like you need to pay more attention to your diet and stuff. And he said, I think you need to look at some kind of like gut reset plan. And I did, and it fixed me. My daughter had a completely separate issue. She went through depression. She actually tried to kill herself. She tried to overdose on ibuprofen. Okay.
Oh, man,
and I'm living with my daughter. I'm dealing with like a separation from my wife. We're like gradually arguing more and more. My child's in chaos. I'm trying to be there for my child. And I'm also having all these fucking ideological debates that I don't even think should matter with me and my wife right now, but she can't stop, And we were always debating on healthcare because I said, I don't trust these fucking people anymore. They were doping up my daughter, because you basically lose your parental rights the minute you say my daughter tried to commit suicide. They pretty much force them to go into like a psych hospital or something for a period. I'm not trying to tell my daughter to lie, but I'm kind of like, please be careful what you say because daddy wants to get you out of here. I don't think you're going to be better here. Like you just can see the environment that they're in there and it's not necessarily better. She does get out, but the doctors are constantly recommending these drugs. She's like doped up.
Yes,
She's
that's
sleeping
right.
okay. Oh, well, we just need to let her relax and not put too much on her. I'm like, look, I'm not a woke fucking parent. She's like sleeping all day. She's not doing shit. That's not going to make her happy to not get sun, to not contribute to the environment that she's living in. Her hair is all like matted and shit every day. So like I see the doctor and he tells me, I say, I talked to my daughter, I said, we need to get you off these these pills, right? She was taking a few different things. And he says to her, she says very plainly to him, because I wanted her to manage this. I try to teach my daughter to be autonomous, to be able to express herself to these people because she's going to have to one day. And he pretty much says, well, we can get you off that one, but I think we're going to put you on this different pill. And then we'll have you tested if that doesn't work for ADHD. So I told my daughter, I said, no, we're fucking done with that, doctor. I'm going to create a plan to get you off the pills. She's been off them for almost a year now. She is one of the most happy, intelligent, like well-adjusted 15-year-old girls I've ever met in my life. People meet her. They say that she's brilliant, that she's like so capable of expressing herself. Her mental health is good. She's like the shining light in my life every day because I said, no, fuck you. I don't care if you're a fucking doctor and you think you know more than me. I know. I've seen, and you're wrong. And if there's any kind of state that tries to take away your right to parent your kids yourself, this shit about your kid could go to school and say that they're trans to a teacher who knows nothing about them, and then they could change their gender and send them back to you, and you can't do shit about it. I mean, some of this stuff was going to happen under Biden, I'm not down with any of that crap. Like, I want parents to be able to be parents because I'm with my kid every day. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a doctor, you think you know more than me. You don't know my child. And you're not going to push her through a system and profit off her through excessive drugs and keeping her in a system that's going to ultimately leave her unhappy, have no belief in God or herself or anything, and she's addicted to your fucking drugs and your system. You know, I just couldn't.
That's a really awful and powerful story. Also, I'm glad that she's doing well and that you're also doing better. I can't
Yeah.
imagine what that must have been like. Actually, my sister's sort of going through something similar. I don't want to get into that, but it's, you know, it does sort of ring. Yeah, it rings true. And I think, you know, tying into what you said and what Johnny said and also what Steve said, you know, they want to make the individual as dependent on the state as possible. And one of the other things that they use is, you know, to make us distrust our own eyes, distrust our own common sense, outsource our thinking, outsource our decision making. But also, you know, that the human mind or memory is, you know, crap, you know, that you shouldn't trust what you remember, right? So basically they're outsourcing your whole agency to the television set or the experts or, you know, the system, the school system, the justice system, what kind
Internet
of
swamp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And reduce the individual and
agree.
make it as small and manipulatable as possible and dependent as possible on the state, right? And the state needs to grow because at the center or at the bottom of it all, like the baseline is corrupt, right? So the money system is corrupt. That's, I mean, Jeff Booth pointed out long time ago that if the money system is broken, then it's only a matter of time before the justice system is broken and every other system is broken, because if the money is broken, you can buy and circumvent all those other systems. So it doesn't matter how many laws you put in place. And as Tacitus, you know, wrote let's say thousands of years ago, the more laws you have in a society, the more corrupt it is. And you got this famous book, 3 Felonies a Day, that we all commit on average 3 felonies a day, and if they want to catch you on anything, they can, right? You saw Trump catch the lady who works at the Federal Reserve. I think she did. I forgot what she did, but you know, they got her on something, just as they got Trump on something, right? Because they got Trump on something, they all do the same thing, right? So
honestly, her working at the Federal Reserve in and of itself was a crime, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's the biggest crime.
I hear you loud and clear. I think it's very like you know, Orwellian is the term I hear again and again, where we can literally rewrite truth as it is happening. I mean, the things that were talked about in this book are literally happening every day. I mean, they talked about Photoshop before we had Photoshop. They talked about changing the news before, like, we literally see this every day. You know what I mean? Like, acting like the narrative has shifted. This is the way we're going to sell this story now. First, Biden was perfectly mentally competent. Now, well, maybe there was something wrong, but it doesn't matter because of this. You know, it's some other reason that someone can't be blamed, or we can't. Correct. And we sometimes trust this little box that tells us what we're supposed to believe every day because of what you said. You know, memory isn't always the most reliable. I just saw
memory is more powerful than history, though.
Yeah, but like Johnny says, like, we're also not using our memory, right? We're not training. It's like a muscle. You actually, you know, tying back to David Graeber and the first 5,000 years of that, you had like communities living for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Oral history.
Based on oral history and collective memory, right? So how did they do that if they didn't even have books and record keeping, you know, like traditional record keeping as we know it, right? How did they do it? Because they used their memory. Like, you know, memory isn't as bad as they claim it to be, right? And
it's also a muscle. You have to train it, and you have to be careful what information you consume, because you can dilute yourself.
Information overload, right?
The crap that you listen to, like when you know that something's bullshit, but you entertain it otherwise for whatever reason, it does impact you over time. I mean, it's true. Our memories can be manipulated. There's a David Lynch film I recently saw, and one of my favorite parts of it, in Lost Highway, he talks about how he doesn't like video cameras because he likes to remember things the way he wants to remember them, not necessarily the way that they happened, which is kind of a recurring theme throughout the movie. And I think a lot of people are like that too, right? But if we balance out our perspective in terms of what is logical, how much we're leaving up to faith, right? When we have a discussion, how much of this is what we think versus what we believe, what we can base on fact versus what is a fugazi or could be real or unreal. I think that's how we can kind of keep this positive narrative going of actually building a genuine future for ourselves, and not one that relies on other people to tell us what the truth is. But you have to be able to trust yourself, right? And a lot of people really don't.
They distrust themselves, and because they distrust themselves, they distrust each other, right? Because if you don't trust yourself and your own capabilities, how can you trust somebody else, right? So that sort of forces you to trust the state.
If you don't love yourself,
none of you guys are experts in anything. How can you possibly trust yourself? What are you talking about? Don't do your own research.
You've never been there. How could you have opinion on it? Like, I've seen it on film. I've read about it. I've heard so many different accounts, but I haven't literally been there. I can't comment on it. There's so many different ways that they'll off your ability to have an opinion on it. I love ad hominem. You're having an argument with somebody about one thing. Well, actually, I disagree with this thing I saw on your profile. So somehow that's related to our discussion. You're an idiot. Like,
right. What? You agree with this, so then I don't have to entertain anything else you say, or the source that you're bringing your facts with is influenced by this one person who I disagree with. Like it's
silly.
People almost exclusively engage in logical fallacy in argument in social media. There's almost never good arguments ever. And then when you point them out, you're just using big words and who are you? Like it's
everything's absolutism, right? There's no actual
it's just
trying
insane
to understand it.
Right. The lack of
and everybody has a point to be made. Even Trump, and these are the issues I had with my wife. Like I tried to say to her, like, I know that you don't disagree with everything Trump says because you're liberal, but like, do you not recognize right now that I work in crypto and Kamala is going to fucking kill like this space for us? Like, can I lay out for you why this would suck if she became the next president? She couldn't even entertain these kinds of discussions. I mean, I love Malay in terms of his political philosophy, but in actually seeing
in practice, he doesn't do much with it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Argentina, and he's cut back on inflation, and he's done some good things. But there's also things that he's done that are kind of shitty. You know what I mean? I can acknowledge that and still be like, well, I like his political philosophy here, but I don't think of him as a god that I have to worship.
Well, it is kind of weird that once politicians become politicians, that they almost always do the exact opposite than what they set out to do, or who they claim to be. You also see it.
Well, they have to take care of the state now. They have to protect the state's interests, not the people's interests. And I think that's the shift that happens.
Shouldn't they be aligned interests with the state?
But they're not. Though I think we learned this. The state is not aligned to the people. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. Isn't that what George Carlin says? It's fucking true. It's Democrats and Republicans, and they're both working.
I think it was Alan Greenspan who used to be like a gold bug before he became Fed chairman, and then he turned around 180, and then dismissed gold and said it was like a barbarous relic, and then when he was Fed chairman he became a gold bug again. It's like.
That's got to be like God, the head spinning to like be able to accomplish something like that and be able to keep the narrative straight that enough people continue to follow you and not think you're full of shit. I don't know how they get away with this. I guess it's just the tribalism.
It's very hard to be in a political position and be honest with what you actually believe.
Yeah. And it's also because of the voters, right? Because we as voters also force them to do stuff which is actually not good, right? Many people who vote actually want a bigger government to solve all their problems, right? So we're also forcing them to become corrupt in a sense, right? Because otherwise they can't get elected, and otherwise they get this, Right.
It starts with the electoral process. They have to raise like an obscene amount of money that enriches our communications establishment. Our media establishment gets vastly rewarded through this paradigm because they're the recipient of a lot of this funding.
Yeah.
And so then we establish that it creates a barrier to entry for actually anyone competing because you're not getting those resources that are being doled out by the government to cover these public elections. That it's insane. It's obvious that there's a big problem, but people are just constantly people are constantly just redirected back to
but that's
these
because
guys said this. Go be mad about it.
But that's because they're not focused on the real problem, right? The real problem is like what Lynn Alden describes in her book Broken Money, right? The money is broken, and as long as we don't fix the money, all of the other stuff we can sort of temporary fix or with like a temporary bandage on the wound, on the gaping wound. But if you don't fix the underlying problem, you just keep going around in circles.
Yeah, not to be a pessimist, but I don't think it's fixable. I mean, you can listen to that, what you shared with me, Nick, that Jeff Booth interview where he talks about, how a free market is supposed to be naturally deflationary. But we are reliant on this broken form of capitalism, which is not even like capitalism. You can call it crony capitalism. You can call it an oligarchy. You can call it whatever the hell you want to call it.
Socialism, fascism.
But this capitalism on the way up, socialism on the way down, right?
Yeah, it doesn't work for us is the point, right? At the end of the day, we're not getting the same value that we put in, and the people at the top are not incentivized to fix it. And by that, I mean the people in government, the people who have the power, who control the monetary supply, the Fed, so on and so forth. So if you can literally have, like, imagine, like, you have a credit card that you never pay off the balance, but every year you get a higher and higher limit, you pay more and more interest. Yeah. And they give you a AAA rating. Like, can you fucking imagine this? And like, they think that they can perpetually get away with this for years. They could literally fund an entire military off the interest on the debt, and it's getting worse. It'll be 2 militaries soon, right? And it's just like, you look at the debt, and it's like literally going in a straight line. It's insane. It's like,
but it's not real, right? So
and it's unsustainable. Right. So basically
it is sustainable. I would tell you it's sustainable, right? Because it's not real. So it's completely imaginary. So as long as everyone believes that it's real.
That's the key point.
It's sustainable.
Do they really believe it though? Are they still buying this bullshit?
Do.
I don't think everybody is. I think that what we're seeing with people investing in Bitcoin is people starting to like get free from the matrix, which is exactly kind of like what this kind of thinking has been described as. It's people waking up. And in my view, Bitcoin, blockchain, decentralized finance, even Ethereum and Stellar, man, like, to me, it's a spiritual movement, and maybe people don't know it. Maybe some of these people are even atheists, but this is the closest thing to God they have, is realizing I'm going to take control of my life through my money, my destiny, my future, like what my life's going to be every day. That's the best that we know. I mean, I like to think that maybe we'll be born again, that our souls are on a journey, and we have all these lifetimes to figure it out and all these different experiences. That's why lately I try to say yes to everything, because who knows if this is my only life or not, but I'm here to like have a journey. It shouldn't just be made based on money. And if I can experience something new that'll guide my soul or heal me or make me learn something or see someone else's point of view, I'm going to say hell yes to that. But how do you have those opportunities if you're literally in a shitty dead end job? You have like 2 kids that you can barely take care of. You can't afford fucking formula for them. You have to get a stipend from the government. You're always worried about whether Trump's going to come in and cut it or some other government's going to maybe it's a liberal who comes in and promises you they're going to give you more, but they don't,
Number one,
or
you have to stop looking at getting a job as an answer or a better job. People need to stop. We need to change and this isn't going to happen, by the way, rapidly or in mass. It's going to take time. But right now, everyone's trained to think about what they're going to do to earn a living for their entire childhood educational career. It's all geared towards learning how to jump through hoops, please the masters, and then directed towards going to incur this massive debt and then being forced into going to work for somebody else. What you really should be doing, everybody, constantly for the rest of their life, is trying to figure out how they can act. Where can they create value? Can you create value for others? What can you do to create value and do that and get better at it and improve those skills? Not worrying about going and working for somebody. Now, if you have a couple of kids and you have bills to pay and a mortgage and everything, that makes it harder. You have to do that in between working your bullshit job. but that's what you have to do. Like, you have to change your mindset into not what can I best sell my time doing, but how do I create value and focus on creating value. That's really the answer.
Yes. I agree with you completely there. Like, one of my early influences was actually a coach who talked about not trading hours for dollars, right? Like, to just say how much your time is worth in terms of a number, because you're going to lose at that. You could prove that statement true so many ways. It could be inflation killing your value over time. It could literally you reducing your existence to a monetary number. What gives your life value? What motivates you? What makes you happy and feel like you're contributing in a meaningful way to society? If you go there, you're going to have a more meaningful and better existence, even if you have to take chances, even if you fall down sometimes, right? Than just literally trying to look at what way can I best just get through tomorrow and maybe have enough money to pay for X, Y, and Z. And, some of that best advice I got didn't come from consultants who tell you what to do, but coaches who show you how to think so you can solve your own problems, right? And that's something you were talking about before. It's a different mindset than being like, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to empower you to make your own decisions and find the solution that you didn't.
Well, and live by the consequences so that you can truly learn. That's the hard piece, right? We're trying to create so many social safety nets, and they sound good because all of us have a bit of fear, right? Especially if you've not done anything hard on your own. So this idea that a safety net is there to protect you so that you don't have to feel the consequence of your action keeps us from actually developing in a manner that would be natural.
It's actually a massive social hero complex. You're not letting people solve their own problems. And so the state's the hero in the hero complex in this situation. But it's actually enslaving everybody to be dependent on the state.
And it's also, it's also very biblical, right? I mean, in the Garden of Eden, when Eve eats of the apple, the tree of good and evil, right? That's like the first moment that they're actually learning something. It's their first mistake, and then they get released from Eden and start living, right? So it's actually sort of a moment of growth, right? So that story is
liberation.
Yeah, it's actually a liberation story, right?
Yeah,
some traditions actually the devil is the good guy.
I like that perspective too. It's almost like that the dual forces of good and evil are kind of meant to tame our souls. This kind of idea of, you're talking about Buddhism earlier, but like samsara, the suffering, the constant suffering of, you have pleasure, then there's pain, and you've got people who think we just got to be zen and try to like not really live for pleasures or anything. I think we should, but I think you also have to understand that everything is transitory. Everything is like sand through your fingers. And if you can have that awareness and appreciation from it and not expect to be insulated from suffering, I think you'll have a better experience. I'm sure you guys have met
enjoy the suffering
who are insulated from their consequences, right? Have you ever met, like, I knew this kid back in like the rave scene days who literally was like his mother and father were rich as hell. He had an Apple computers, multiple of them, before I even knew what Apple fucking was, right? He had DJ equipment that he was able to learn and practice before I even was able to save up for my first kit. He had everything I ever wanted, even like a cooler in his room with all completely stocked with Gatorades. When I drank too many Gatorades, my parents would give me a fucking, the third degree about how expensive stuff was, and I needed to not be so wasteful. He would just drink as much as he wanted. His mom would bring some burritos or sandwiches into the room and like some drinks or something for us. What the hell, Mom? Why are you bothering me again? He was like literally like Cartman. I swear, he was like the closest thing to Cartman. Not exactly fat like Cartman, but you get the perspective of how he treated his own mother. He was literally a sociopath. He stole from her. He stole from me. He stole from people who tried to help him, give him DJ gigs and stuff. He ended up dying of a seizure in his sleep, right? But the lesson for me from this is people who don't have to deal with the consequences of their actions, they can become some of the most deranged, scary people you've ever met. And it's sad because I didn't want him to go out that way. I wanted him find his way and be a happy person. We were friends at one time, even though he stole from me and tried to hurt me many times. I've always tried to live with love, and even if I don't like somebody or I think that they're a bad person, I'd rather like them find their way and contribute positively to society rather than meet some untimely end, because that doesn't really benefit anyone. It just means they stop being a problem, I guess, which, in some cases, I guess that's the best thing that can happen, but it's incredibly tragic. But yes, suffering and having to be responsible for yourself, to me, is the closest thing to God that we have. I mean, you talk about free market principles, they're guided by the invisible hand. You could call that the hand of God. The idea of people bartering with each other and coming to agreement amongst themselves, amongst a collective of humans. I mean, if we want to talk about like communication or being in sync with each other on a greater level, I mean, that seems to be what it is, the closest thing that we have, without government having to come in and arbitrarily say what deals are fair and what deals are not,
Absolutely. Yeah, you got like many mystical traditions, like which ties into your earlier point, like that life is all about experience, like that life is actually experiencing itself over and over again from different perspectives, and also with religion, I'm also a spiritual person. I don't subscribe to a particular faith, but I do think that there's something more powerful and bigger out there than us. But I also think it's important with religious faiths to also sort of take different perspectives, right? And to look at your faith or ideology from different perspectives. And like what you said earlier is, I think many people sort of get very black and white with their thinking about the state, about what's good, what's bad.
Yes,
religion is and isn't. Right. That's what I mentioned earlier. With the Garden of Eden. For example, the Yazidis, they believe in the Peacock King, right? So that's sort of Satan not bowing before God. Actually, I just saw a really cool series with my girlfriend called Genie Make a Wish. It's like a K-drama. I have to watch K-drama for my girlfriend.
Yeah.
but it's pretty good. But it's actually it's really funny because it's about Iblis, and Iblis is Shaitan or Satan in the Arabic culture. But in this series, they're portraying him as a good guy. He sort of goes through this journey and actually becomes sort of liberated by, in the end, bowing before God's creation. But my whole point here is actually, that you have to take different perspectives, or John Milton's Paradise Lost. There's good guy there. But the point is, like, you have to be able to sort of switch perspectives and be playful with your belief systems. And simply take different perspectives and look at things critically. And sometimes the good guys can be the bad guys, and the bad guys can be the good guys.
That's right.
And also thinking about, like you said, the hero complex.
Mm-hmm.
I think the hero complex is a really dangerous thing. The knight in the shining armor. If you think in those kind of terms that somebody's going to save you, right? That's actually the wrong way to think about it. Like, you have to save yourself.
Unless you're the knight in shining armor,
Yeah.
But you can only be your own knight in shining armor. If you're trying to be somebody else's knight in shining armor, you're costing them the capacity to be their own. That's where that's the paradigm there. And from the idea, so I was raised Roman Catholic. I went to a Catholic prep high school and learned a lot about all sorts of alternate religions in high school. We were taught about a lot of different things. Christian Brothers, great education. I don't consider myself to hold any specific faith anymore. I'm very spiritual. I do believe. I guess we all hope that there's something beyond this, right? But from what we can tell from our subjective limitations, and we all trapped in this subjective perspective. From what I can tell, it seems like the purpose for being here is to have subjective experiences and respond to those stimuli and change and grow from that and so on and so on. So we're in this matrix of experiences. That's what we're here. We're here to have experiences
and to learn from
the only way to have right. But there's the duality is present, because you can't have experience if there isn't a duality. You have to have a negative and positive like there has to be the capacity to have that value system.
You have to have the capacity to make mistakes, right? If you can't make mistakes,
right? There's no story is good without a foil. You have to have a bad guy. So that's a necessary part of the equation as well.
Yes, and like that completely resonates with me, because the people who I notice struggle the most are often people who've put themselves in rigid mindsets where they can't have experiences anymore, or if they have an experience, they
And
don't
then you
take the right
shrink.
thing from it, right? Because their perspective is shrunk. You could show someone the world, but if they can't see it, or they have rose-colored glasses on, they're not going to even understand what you're showing them. I was raised like Roman Catholic. I went to Catholic private school like every year, but like my senior year, which is when I started going to raves. So my parents, of course, thought, oh, it must have been us sending them a public school that made it go rogue, right? But really, like long time before that, like my experiences with people who were supposedly faith-based made me an atheist for many years, almost my whole life, except for like year and a half ago, that all of that kind of changed. Like my perspective that maybe there is something greater. Maybe I'd missed something. Maybe I was actually the person who wasn't being logical anymore, assuming that I could understand the world just based on my limited perspective of what I could see, right? But my sister, she's born again, my half sister, and we don't even speak to each other anymore because I was going through this time and I was learning to trust my instincts. And she would tell me things like, like trust can be a lie, like trusting yourself can be a lie. And I was just shocked by that like
you can lie to yourself.
Yeah, true. But I mean, the idea that we need to
dangerous
listen to compulsively listen to a 2,000-year-old book and not trust your own gut, like maybe this isn't right. I think I should read the Bible. Well, the Bible seems to lead me to think this is right, even though I don't feel like it is. You know what I mean? Like there has to be an element of self-truth rather than constantly relying on outward sources. And I was dealing with some really weird situations in my life that I felt like I had to trust myself. I hadn't trusted my instincts my whole life. And now I finally was. And I was like preventing
made in the image.
Yeah, I was starting to like actually avoid a lot of negative things in my life by trusting myself. But one of the things I would point out to her, you're talking about, I think like biblical characters and things earlier, but like one of the most interesting characters I find is Lilith, right? So, Adam apparently had Lilith in his life before Eve or something like this, but she wouldn't lie down for him. And this chapter is actually excluded from the main text of the Bible, but you also have there was like an organization of Jewish feminists that called themselves I don't know if it was the Lilith Society or something. It might've been a reading group. The idea was they embraced her as kind of a hero because she wouldn't lay down for man. Like they took this character that was looked at as ungodly because she wasn't subservient to a man. And they created this different kind of narrative with the same story, the same idea of, you could view the devil as just being pure evil, or you could look at him as a necessary evil for growth, right? Mm-hmm. You could see that as well. And I pointed this out to her, kind of hoping we could have a bigger discussion on how people can take different truths from the same story, about how the Bible itself is actually compiled by man, by fallible man. The chapters are arranged and the structure ordained by man. And if you even want to say, well, God is the person who laid this down, well, did he also lay down the translations from Hebrew to English? And if you understand the differences between Hebrew and English, you understand that's not a neat and clean translation. When he spoke, the word was light. Like what that literally means in Hebrew versus what it means translated, you can't really say that it's 100% perfect when people don't even agree on the chapters. You've got stories where Jesus killed people and brought them back to life, like in his teens, you know what I mean? But you want to say that the Bible's 100% perfect? Okay, go ahead, Johnny.
The Bible is a very interesting book, and it's very full of valuable lessons and insights, and also into human nature. And But I totally agree with what you say. There are some very interesting translation choices within the Bible.
Sure.
And but I think, for example, one of the major lessons from the Bible is love thy neighbor as thyself. Right? But when you really look at that sentence, what does that actually mean? It means that you have to love yourself in order to be able to love thy neighbor. Right? If you don't love yourself, you cannot love your neighbor.
Right.
So that means you have to take care of yourself. You have to take responsibility. You have to be capable. You have to be trusting in yourself in order to be a good neighbor, right? In order to be
Know
somebody.
yourself.
Yeah. So, but people are only focusing on love thy neighbor, right? They forget the other part. But the other part is actually that's the critical part of the sentence.
And you have to be able to have strength to lend strength, right? So if you're in a position of weakness and you're attempting to solve for your neighbor's problems, it's never going to be a lasting solution and even a good trade-off of use of time, right? But I wanted to just step back a little bit to a couple of things that were mentioned. Fry, you mentioned that you had to be able to like trust in your own sort of wisdom and your own experience in order to discern how to move forward. And ultimately, I think that is biblical. It's right there. We're made in the image, right? From clay, right? And I think we do have the touch of our Creator within each of us. And there is a rather obvious ploy here by mostly sort of world powers and oligarchs here to just sort of trivialize our spiritual existence, and that there is some sort of creator to keep us from truly discovering that truth. And then on something that you mentioned, Nick, there, I think theologians in the Christian world have long struggled with all the translations and all of the interpretations and what is canon and what is not canon, and certainly used it to manipulate it to their own means within the Catholic Church specifically, but beyond too, right? We see it with all sorts of other derivatives of the church and the fracturing within the denominations to say our version of Christ is the real version and everyone else's is bunk,
Yeah, you see that also in crypto, right? Our version,
100%, right?
What is it like that debate over what is canon and what is not? You've got your Star Wars nerds who talk about it. You got your religious fanatics, and you got your Bitcoin.
It's human nature. It's human nature.
It is, right? We're like, this is our tribe, and we're sticking with it. Team raw. But John Wesley, he stated that if you could show him a man that understood the mind of God, he would show you a worm that understood the mind of man. And I think ultimately that's what we see was we have all these folks interpreting things as though, yes, this is the spoken word of God, but as interpreted by a very feeble mind in comparison to the extent of creation. And I think that's where we're all wrestling with it. And I applaud those who truly do wrestle with it and don't just land on this very concrete, this is the only truth aspect of nature, which I think all three of you have expressed well today, that it is 100% this experience of searching that is the most important aspect of what we're doing here, right? So relationships and experiences, in my perspective, are the only real things in this life. Everything else is just complete transitory, right? The ones that matter most are the relationships with the people and the experiences that you share together that should inform us of like how we're going to make an impact in this world. And the distractions they give us from those two things are absolutely endless. We have people trying to dive into the parent-child relationship and change it fundamentally by removing parental rights, right? We have people essentially creating all of these lovely superhero movies that say, hey, you can't do it alone. You're going to have some extra power to solve the world's problems. Your parents, they can't do it. You need to go worship something else, right? Like all of this kind of works together to keep us distracted from what I view as very fundamental. We are created in the image. We have been given the ability to kind of shape our reality.
To create.
And create absolutely ourselves. And so, it's all symptoms of the same issue. And it does come down to good versus evil in my mind. Right. But it's not in the sense of crime versus utopia. It is very much like the individual versus the person that would seek authority and use violence to control the individual.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with those very wise words. And I think, you know, I chose the title, of course, also because of DeFi and a play on your name, of course, Fry, Defiance and Definance. But
It
I
makes
think
me feel super special, by the way.
you're welcome. No, but one of the things that sort of ties into what we are talking about with freedom and defiance is that in order to create a working state, a well-functioning state, you actually need citizens that defy the state at some level, right? That you actually need strong individuals, strong-minded, critical individuals, self-critical individuals, in order to have a well-functioning state that is basically made up of functioning individuals, right? If you have a collective, it means like you have a malfunctioning state of a group of brain dead people, right? That are just following trends and
Like if you had a herd of cows like running off a cliff and one of them
yeah,
decides to
lemmings.
stop, and then maybe some actually decide, oh, I'm going to follow the other one that's not running off the cliff. It's like you have those 9 people who might be accepting a narrative and doing the wrong thing, and you have that 10th one who's a denier, right? But sometimes it's that 10th man that like saves everybody, right? And that comes back to what we were talking about, like love thy neighbor as thyself, meaning you have to love and trust yourself. And, you know, when I talk to my daughter about this subject, it's also about like holding yourself accountable, right? Because if you hold a higher standard for yourself, right, and you don't give yourself excuses to simple things like not keep your room clean or to do your chores when you're supposed to keep on task with your assignments, to try to like spend every day bettering yourself in some way, you won't make time or excuses for people who waste your time if you don't waste your own, you know? And that's a very relevant thing. And if you're able to do that, if you're able to trust yourself, you're able to walk into new experiences, keep yourself with your own sense of ethics or beliefs that keep you grounded in a positive experience, right? And not feel like you have to say no to everything because it's ungodly or it's evil. And that's kind of what I was getting to with my sister. She's at the point where she doesn't listen to music. She won't watch movies. She doesn't participate in experience anymore because she thinks she has it all from a book. And she's becoming such a dull person who's not like not capable of critical thinking anymore. And that is what I think we find a lot in decentralized finance, to tie it back together, is people who are capable of critical thinking, people who are capable of breaking the mold, not just in just starting with the decision to put some of your money into Bitcoin or to put it into Ethereum or to put it into Stellar, right? That already is a dynamic shift from people who are just comfortable to keep all their money in the bank and who still think that that's the safest way to go, right? Like that's a dramatic shift. But then you have people who build in the space, right? You've got people who participate to communities all day, meme coin communities, creating freaking memes because that's the closest sense of community that they have. But they're some of the most interesting and giving people you'll ever meet.
That's right.
My developer is an incredible example of that. I mean, we have been funded twice now for our ticketing project, Cheers Finance. And at a very low point in our development experience, and with a lot of things going wrong in my personal life, like me thinking he was just a person being paid to work on something and it taken a little bit longer for us to produce than was expected. He actually gave me a bunch of the money back and then continued to work on the project so that I could take care of some things that I need to deal with personally. And he continued developing the project. He's helping migrate it to Stellar right now and has not asked for a penny. Like, I don't know where these people freaking come from, right? You don't find these people in society, and you think, oh, ANCAP, like, oh, he's just about money. No, I do that for people too sometimes. I give in my own ways too. It's just, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Just because I can take everything or I can make the rules how I want, I also want to make people happy. I want people to have positive experiences, and I want to use my freedom to do good things, like to produce something meaningful for other people. And that's what my developer did for me. And it shocked me. I'd never had somebody do something like that before. After putting 3 years into a project to give me most of the money back so I could survive for a couple months, like while my house was being sold, I was like shocked that he even like did that. And you won't see these kind of people all the time in ordinary life. I met some of them in the rave scene, you know, and it wasn't just they were this political belief or that, you know, they came from all across the board, different people I met who they just would be so giving to you at times that you really needed it, whether it was a ride or a bottle of water or just someone to talk to you because you're going through something, you know, like that's what I think the human experience is about. And I want to continue to find places that celebrate that. And again, that's very much what I feel like DeFi Expectations is about. It's the joy we get from creating in this space, not just the money we make, it's the friends we make along the way, right? You know, I think that's a very important part of what it's about.
But not all is good in crypto, because we got our friend Johnny here, and he's done some excellent research into a lot of. Actually, I listened to Gold Money Talk, Digital Money, sorry, Digital Gold Talk. Is it right? The group. Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah. You were on it with Jared.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, that.
I think it's Digital Gold, and you sort of talked about the stuff with Binance, right? And that's sort of a passion of you know, tracking the blockchain and, you know, what's actually going on with the funds. And you already mentioned that if you can control the money, if you control the fiat system, if you can control, you're basically controlling the incentive structure of humanity itself, right? Can you
your own corrupt DEX and hold 85% of the supply of the token, like Aster,
for example? But what did you find out, Johnny? Can you tell us a little bit more about your discovery?
I mean, it's something I've been talking about for quite some time, right? So probably at least 4 years now, in terms of the infrastructure that they've been building. I haven't always understood the infrastructure Binance was creating, but I understood that they were truly building a machine. I didn't exactly know how they were going to market the machine and or the purpose of the machine, but I knew that it continued to build and grow. I could only describe what was happening in terms of their accumulation of both coins and tokens, how they continued to expand their reach through white label cloud-based exchange services that they were creating. I could start to see like how the liquidity agreements work between them and the market makers and other exchanges on chain, both through Bitcoin, Litecoin, Doge, and Digibyte. But again, I was really just describing the on-chain flows for a while. I came to the conclusion that they had been essentially churning all these UTXOs for quite some time to clear their history, which they'd done quite well through using multiple exchanges, ciphering through KuCoin, OKX, and a number of other exchanges where the funds were actually being fractured out into, you know, thousands of addresses.
Was Bitfavo also one of them? Or?
No, Bitfavo's a little different piece of the equation. Bitfavo was, we can go back to that someday, but Bitfavo was sort of testing the bots and how they would respond. And so we'll talk about that. It takes some time, but anyhow, what it comes down to is they've built a essentially a liquidity layer that is wholly dependent upon them. And for a while there, I thought it truly was just about being able to control behind the scenes and make sure all the coins that they were selling were clean. Whenever all the KYC and AML gets implemented across the ecosystem, that they alone would be able to provide the necessary liquidity that would be able to essentially be traded, because otherwise you're not going to be able to get a coin that's clean anywhere in the marketplace unless you're getting it through some sort of centralized exchange. But through all of these techniques, they've been able to amass very large quantities clean coin, essentially, that is not tainted in any way. And so as AI comes on board and is able to essentially
This is only
see,
specific to UTXO based.
no, it's not, unfortunately. It's where I tracked it primarily. But yeah, I started taking a look through like Ethereum based tokens and Ethereum itself and found very, very similar patterns of circular flow. And some of those flows,
this is predicated on if there is an establishment of no coins except for clean coins can be recognized, which isn't yet.
Well, so there's two systems. So there'll be the regulated system, and that's where they want to play, right? They want to be the global settlement layer for the BRICS nations, right? And that's where they're essentially designing this infrastructure to be. I've stated for years that they're going to attempt to move essentially financial center of the world into the UAE and be an east-west bridge.
Many people are not ready for that yet.
For liquidity. Well, but they don't necessarily know they have to participate in it to be participating in it, right? So
right. It's all going to be abstracted away. Most people won't know they're even in crypto.
That's correct. And that's exactly what Brian said earlier this week, right? So Brian Armstrong was like, hey, 10 years from now, nobody knows that they're dealing in crypto, but they are, right? And so that's why you have Brian through USDC entering an agreement with Binance and for the liquidity to be able to flow east-west relatively simply. But anyhow, I digress. All I can say is they've built the fundamental layer of liquidity for the incoming monetary system that will ultimately, sort of replace the SWIFT messaging system for global banking. They'll market it as more efficient, that ultimately they can tokenize the world, and they will do so on chain. But Binance is central to all of that for now, at the very least. And who knows that that's the only outcome, right? But based on what I've seen right now, that's the most likely outcome.
Do you think there's a potential problem with this? Because, I mean, we're talking about what Binance, one of these big centralized entities, creating this liquidity layer we're supposed to trust. And to point out this problem, I want to ask a question. I know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask the question anyway, and then I'm going to get to why I asked the question. What is a clean coin?
One that nobody can prove they stole from the ecosystem, and 100% they stole it.
Proven innocent without any accusation of guilt.
Well, they've stolen it, right? Because they've monetized volatility over the time. They've extracted all of the money from retail participants who thought they were actually in a market, right. Not realizing that they were essentially donating their funds to Binance and other exchanges in the process. And they've used it to accumulate real assets, or at least real digital assets as we see them.
So do we think it's a good idea for any kind of centralized entity or government to subjectively decide what's clean and what's not? I mean, the bigger
we all agree that that's not a good idea.
Is anybody talking to the Fed every day and debating over how clean the fucking dollar is? I mean, let's literally look at $100 bills.
Oh, I know.
A percentage of them are laced with cocaine, have cocaine residue on it. Let's just look at the physical nature of it.
That's probably one of the most benign things that the dollar's used for, too.
Right. We'll talk about like the dollar that's in a stripper's G-string. We'll talk about all the different ways that money is exchanged back and forth, and then you give it to your kid as a birthday gift and you don't know where it's been. My point is, and then you have this money entering crypto that might be actually the best, most cleanest way it can be used, with money that has been, overtaxed again and again, that it has plenty of crime laced to it, financial crime, not by the people using it. I'm talking about the people printing it, okay? That's where I'm starting. And now it is entering the crypto market to actually enter this decentralized world. Jeff Booth talked about this. We can talk about Bitcoin as being, this really great future of money, but it is often bought with ill-gotten gains, right? And we have to recognize this as well, right? And now we're going
Any
to
great
have
wealth comes from a great crime.
these regulated bullshit institutions that are literally telling us what's a crime and what's not, coming into a system that is fed with money that they have already tainted with crime, and they want to tell us what's clean and what's not. I'm sorry, no money is clean. Like, this is bullshit. I mean, I love that they're trying to solve this problem and continue to provide a liquidity layer so we can continue to transact. But
I didn't say they were trying to solve this problem. They were trying to monopolize this problem.
Okay, that's probably a better way to put it, yes.
This idea of needing it, in this regulated place. Now, I would say that's one side of the equation. The other side is out there in the dangerous world beyond the walled gardens, where people actually can decide what has value in their life. And I think that's what we all advocate for, right?
Right. We're definitely on the same page there. No, like, me bringing that up is just the point of, what's sad is when they control the money, they control the narrative, right? And for us to even talk about this, solving these problems, we have to play in their game, their maze that they built for us, using terms that they understand, like clean and dirty money, when really, when you look at the bigger perspective,
it's all dirty.
It's so ridiculous. Exactly.
That's why I carry the name Johnnylaw, right? So the Scottish economist that came up with this idea of rehypothecation. And in France, started the central banking movement, so to speak, and then goes to Louisiana.
Was a big success.
It was a very big success. And it goes to Louisiana, and sorts of propagates this idea here in the States as well. It's all a fiction. And we've got to kind of reset in a different way that gives power back to individuals in the marketplace. And I know that's what we're all here for. But, on the Binance side of the equation, I'm nothing but impressed. How could you not be, right? Like, ultimately, it's a brilliant play. He's been able to stay under the radar this entire time. I can't even say that this latest move was any sort of mistake. It could be that we're just moving back into the shadows, having accomplished his primary goals, as the marketplace really began to become more public, and his desire probably to be more public is, with what he's built, is probably next to nothing. You don't really necessarily see BlackRock taking out its inner workings and publicizing that anymore. Right. You might have their CEO come on board to say something like Bitcoin is good. But you don't necessarily have him tell you what it's good for and what they're going to use it for, or how they're going to use it, or what the price is about, or anything like that. Right. So I think it could be just that. I think this could have been a strategic play in and of itself.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I still remember that interview with Larry Fink, I think like 2 years ago, something like that. And that he said Bitcoin is great to invest in, but it's not good as money, or, it's not. So basically he's saying to everybody oh, it's okay, put all your money into this thing, but the thing that it's actually built for, to become money, no, that's not that's not
right. Yeah.
And it's the same with most exchanges these days, with the KML and AML and KYC. It's like you especially in Europe with the MiCA regulation, you can only technically send yourself crypto, right? You have to prove that the wallet is your own wallet, right? So what is the point of crypto if you can only send yourself money? It has no point, right? But you can invest in it because we have all these tokens on an exchange, and they generate fiat profits, right?
Well, and the funny part is, at least to me, right? So years ago, an acquaintance in the Netherlands, when I was pointing out what was going to happen with unhosted wallets, that they would be banned from the marketplace. Due to Financial Action Task Force, which is really just the United States and the IMF, essentially stating what their goals were, that they were going to be banned, and they ridiculed me nonstop. They're like, "It's never going to come to that. We're never going to get there." It's like, guys, it's super simple. Like they're not going to embrace anything that gives individuals agency and keeps them from being able to control their decisions. And the easiest way to do so and not be the bad guy is to do it through financial means. Because if you do it at the point of a gun, then the violence becomes obvious.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's still a total monopoly on violence, because if you can't get your money out and feed yourself in your own way, live life on your own terms, I mean, the end result is death. I mean, so they're
it's still an initiation of force. It's just less obvious, so it's harder to
That's right.
point the finger and oppose.
That's bad. That's good. You can't. Right. It's much harder to do so, right? Especially to those folks. And I didn't mention earlier, but the challenge with all this complexity is a mental challenge. It is definitely something that our brain naturally filters, right? It puts things in buckets and neat little buckets everywhere that we can be able to make it through our day, because we didn't try to process every bit of information. We kind of categorized different pieces of it, and we just kind of filtered out lots of information, right? And unless you are absolutely committed to questioning your filters on a daily basis, you're never going to be able to get better at it, right? And with all of the information that we now have access to, they've essentially just hacked us entirely, like our entire brain network, and created this chaos so we don't find the purpose in our existence.
Yeah, it's a problem, but we are all collectively working on the solution here. And I have to jump off. I'm not trying to end the show, but I just want to say, awesome conversation. I love chapping it up with you guys. Great stuff from all three of you. I'm honored to have actually been included in this, and I appreciate it. And I'm actually very encouraged, because all four of us come at this from a different perspective. But we're all also, and we all actually have like a specific ecosystem that maybe we're a little preferential to, but we're also we're not maxis. And that's because we all actually adhere to the ethos that this is all predicated on. Decentralization is like a ridiculous position to take if you're a maxi on any, like you can't take a maxi position,
right,
and be in favor of decentralization. That doesn't work out. And so, I'm very encouraged that the more we have these conversations and come at them from, none of us was here to shill our project. We were here to have a conversation. And I absolutely put a bunch of stacks related links in the stream underneath my stream and all of that. And huge shout out, by the way, I'd love to have you on, Johnny, sometime to talk about Digibit, and Fry come talk about XLM. And obviously Nick's welcome to come on and talk about, Nick's a Bitcoin first guy. He really is. Like, I love Bitcoin, by the way. I'm also Bitcoin first, but I play around with everything, and I want to learn about everything.
I do play around with everything,
right. And that's the same, right? Nick's not a maxi on Bitcoin. He's just we probably all kind of realize that Bitcoin maybe is the blue chip, the first one, and everything else.
I think people are still underestimating the power of Bitcoin, right? I think the incentive structure that is embedded within it will ultimately win out, even though it has this breathing pattern. Actually, I think it was most centralized during Mt. Gox's time, like that actually there was the most centralization, and then it decentralizes again, and now we're in a centralization phase again.
Yes.
But it will breathe out again, and it will decentralize again. And I think it's basically because of it will be a close call. I agree, but I think the incentive structure embedded within it will force participants to decentralize. And I think the key element will be energy. That will make it decentralized again, because as soon as countries wake up to what Bitcoin is and what it can offer, and a lot of these countries all over the world outside of America's and China's reach have a lot of energy to spend.
That's right.
Amen to that. Like, if you can solve these problems with free market principles and Bitcoin, my God, are you going to change some minds and turn some people into economics majors overnight? Like, it could really.
Definitely. Now, people have never experienced money that works, right? That's the problem. And basically, even gold was not optimal I mean, to your earlier point, right? Governments and civilizations come and go. You got some great books on that. Joseph Tainter wrote the Complex Societies, the Collapse of Complex Societies, where he sort of grows from the Harappan societies to the Incas, to the Aztecs, to European societies and Chinese societies. They all come and go. Okay, the Chinese do have a continuous stream, but they did definitely have collapses as well, like where the state really contracts and that they have to survive. So, and Ray Dalio wrote excellent books on it. He said, so no centralized system will ultimately win out, right? I mean, basically, what Bitcoin, everything that Bitcoin touches, it decentralizes. It is deflationary. I think it's actually a force of nature, like a digital force of nature. And they're fighting. So they're fighting nature, and nature wins out, generally speaking.
100%.
It's my view on this. That's why I'm Bitcoin centric first. But I love DigiByte, Decred. Stellar is also interesting. You sort of opened my eyes a little bit. I was a bit skeptical at first, but I'm gonna give a closer look to Stellar. And I love X, of course, because it's a layer on top of Bitcoin. So what's not to like? And Monero.
Yeah, I mean, I really began to appreciate Bitcoin more when I got onboarded with Badger DAO. Their whole idea of bringing Bitcoin to DeFi, because that was especially a problem early on. It's like this digital gold kind of thing, right? But if you can't do a lot with it, I'll see you later. Peace.
Take care, man.
If you can't really do a lot to transact with it, do the smart contract thing or anything, you need some kind of like middle ground. And that was Badger and what they were able to accomplish with Ethereum C as well. Johnny, was good to have those guys on. But like I'm realizing more and more as well how Bitcoin can stand on its own, how its proof of work model is not a negative aspect to it, but actually its greatest strength, which when I was an Ethereum maximalist, the idea of proof of stake and energy efficiency and some of my early, beliefs about green energy, like
at first glance, it makes sense, right? I mean,
yeah, you first hear it that way. And then you discover, like you said, like how in these developing countries, you can use like wasted energy from things like flaring and mines and stuff to actually produce energy to produce Bitcoin with certain types of machines.
And it cleans up the environment, right? That's another thing, because people say Bitcoin is a polluter, but actually it will, take care of flared gas. It will, make a green energy or renewable energy profitable, because right now it's sort of subsidized. So it means you get a bigger state. If you want green energy, the state has to grow, right? It has to spend money in order to keep these projects alive. But Bitcoin can make them actually profitable on their own terms. So that means that you get more green energy. And you already see that in the energy that is used to mine Bitcoin, the renewable segment of it is actually only growing and getting bigger. I think it's already over 50%. So,
the stabilization of the grid too. This idea that you could have a waterfall in an area that otherwise isn't near civilization or something, but like Bitcoin can actually be mined using kind of like hydropower, and then when you're able to collect more, you can use that to build infrastructure by selling it or transferring it, whatever, to fund infrastructure in a place that maybe doesn't have the same resources but a greater population, and this transference back and forth of
it also means that those countries, like for example in Africa, that are living in poverty at the moment, that they will be uplifted and maybe finally get on equal footing with Western countries, because they are getting rid of the corruption within their system through Bitcoin and decentralized systems. And that means that Bitcoin itself, through its very nature and success, will decentralize itself, right? Because as these nations grow stronger and more independent, and like the individual, like people taking responsibility, the more nations get involved, the more decentralized Bitcoin becomes, right? And that will make it more valuable, and that attracts more people, and then it becomes more decentralized. So it's like you got all these virtuous feedback loops that are embedded within Bitcoin.
Yes, and I may
Bitcoin.
not be a fan of the state, but I mean, would love and appreciate more a state funded on Bitcoin, you know, where it can uplift its citizens, where you can have Bitcoin subsidies the same way you have like oil subsidies in Alaska. You know what I mean? Like it's a similar concept of, you know, we've produced this excess energy now we can work on infrastructure. Okay, we have the infrastructure, but our people are in need. Now we can provide for our people. I'm not against that. I mean, I don't consider that, like, when you have an abundance that's created by a local community and you have something that's working, I'm all for it. My argument against government has been, in my experience, it is not a positive thing. But the reason it's not positive, it's built on a broken monetary system.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing we come back to. And these different chains, and why, like, I went from being an Ethereum maximalist to like having my eyes open with like how DeFi could be fully realized on Stellar without these slow ass transactions and this very uncomfortable user experience where you like pretty much click a button, accept a couple things and pray that it works out, you know, like you actually can have a full on DeFi experience. But how these things come together really matters, whether it's you have Bitcoin in a staking contract to get some kind of yield from Badger, or you have something locked into a lending and borrowing protocol a pound on Ethereum, a la Blend Capital on Stellar. You know what I mean? And and basically everybody that I work with, in some sense or another, they have a greater vision about how to put this all together with these different moving parts and do something meaningful with it. I mean, in terms of Lumexo, you know, we're trying to be an all-in-one DEX, wallet, and DeFi provider for Stellar. And that's why we're talking to people like Blend Capital. That's why we're talking to people like Near Intents associated with Near Protocol. That's why we're looking to people who are creating positive things in the space and saying, like, what can we do next? With Cheers, for me, it's about not just having it on Ethereum, because, you know, if I'm trying to take down Ticketmaster, I should probably have the user experience be as seamless as using a credit card, right? Can't really do that on Ethereum. So we're trying to move to Stellar, right? But I'm also looking at what we can do with Bitcoin and like what kind of projects in the space are doing interesting things with that. So to kind of come back to the show a little bit, I just thought I'd talk a little bit about like what the first month's lineup is going to be.
Yeah, please do, because I'm looking forward to to your production to the show.
Yeah, so we have this kind of kickoff here, but yeah, next week, Sunday, which will be 4 p.m. Central Time. Every other week should be 3 p.m. Central Time. If we Central European Time. That's very important.
So it's around 9. So the first show would be 10 a.m. EST, and then 9 a.m. EST.
Every following, correct. So the Sunday, the 26th, would be our AMA for Lumexo. So basically, I'll be hosting with a community member by the name of Moses, and we'll be talking about questions that we've been fielded from the community. If you take a look at Lumexo right now, we've experienced tremendous growth. It's pretty incredible. We've been posting a lot of like news items and stuff, and the whole team is collaborating on this. Like we have a really wonderful, multi-talented team of developers, marketing, operations. People are trying to like put all of our skills together to form this one central hub of value, an all-in-one source for what you're looking for trading, for managing your wallet, and having certain DeFi capabilities on Stellar network, which we hope eventually will lead to some kind of integration with Blend as well, so that we can enable lending and borrowing, right? And then we're even talking to Near Intents and Near Protocol about things like cross-chain swaps. So if you kind of can think about the possibility of integrating all these things together, you know, Lumexo is already a prominent organization project in the Stellar ecosystem, but eventually we will probably have our hands all across the board, you know, with some of these integrations that we're looking to put into works. And we do have our app fully working. So everyone can kind of go there and just feel free to launch, set up a wallet. If you have not, you only need 5 XLM to get it going. So like under $2, and you're ready to swap and see how seamless it is to transact on our network. We've got a blog. We've been sharing lots of news and getting attention from the bigger Stellar community. Our growth has been tremendous lately. So now's the time to like get in and see what we're doing. And, you know, eventually we're even talking about a token, and not a meaningless bullshit pump and dump token, but something that has value and people are going to want to hold on to, and kind of look to how we're going to incentivize and develop our growth and create something kind of meaningful for our community. Because, you know, Lumexo, we may be, you know, a project with a typical like company and LLC based in, you know, Georgia and all that. So that we're able to kind of transact and offer people the free marketplace that we believe in. Things like, if you come to us with a token, we don't need to charge you listing fees or something. We just have a simple application process we're creating for you to get listed in the way that you want, and it's handled, it's done. Like, we're a free market, you know. Like, you know, obviously we have the corporation and business structure, but where we go from the token is more so about the community. It's like, how can we use this for certain parts of the project that might be more influenced by like a kind of DAO structure and token voting or things like that, or incentives from staking, providing liquidity rather, or doing swaps on the platform of certain tokens that maybe we partner with for special incentives. We're looking at all kinds of solutions, especially with like what's been done with Badger DAO, as kind of like a model of how to do an effective airdrop or incentive campaign to really get people to come into the space and want to contribute positively to what we're trying to do. So that will be kind of like our first AMA that we've ever hosted, and we'll be using Bitcoin Live to do that with this new show, DeFi Expectations. So that's kind of how we'll be kicking it off.
And DeOrganized Media.
And DeOrganized Media as well. Correct. And all your partners and exciting people across the board. Like, it's really wonderful to be on board with all you guys. And we'll be following up that first Sunday with Crinkle. So this is basically an app that you'll actually be able to provide receipt data. They're starting with receipts in America to essentially earn sats, like Bitcoin sats and points.
Nice.
And they're pretty much dealing with some VC funding prospects right now. So things could be kicking off very quickly, but now's the time to get involved with that. Anyone who's interested, just DM me, DeFi Fry on X, and I'll be happy to send you like a QR code so that I can profit off all of your receipt data as well. But yeah, like I'm really excited to get people in with those referral codes and show them what's being created here, because it's a pretty nifty little app. And I think where it goes from here is going to be pretty cool. And that November 2nd episode is for me to talk to Stardust Miner from the community about what they're specifically looking to do. So please do DM me on DeFi Fry on X, and I'll be happy to share that with you. Also, same name on Telegram and Discord. You can find me as well. The following week, we're back to Lumexo. We'll be doing, so November 9th, with Mateus. He's the CEO of CryptoStar Gaming Academy and part of the Stellar Ambassadors from Brazil program. Cool. So I met him during Stellar Meridian. He's such a fun guy, so cool, so smart. And his big focus is gamification, and additionally enabling kind of like accessibility to the Stellar and blockchain in general to individuals in Brazil specifically, and making it not just something that ties into maybe economic problems and solutions that are relevant to this community, but also tying it into the culture and making sure the incentive and gamification structure works. So we're going to have a really fun time talking about Lumexo on that project, jumping back into how Stellar Meridian went and what that meant for us to attend, as well as how do we solve these problems globally, starting with Brazil, and how do we make sure that blockchain technology is relevant across the board to people who maybe just have different issues depending on what specific country they're in or what solutions they need. So after that one, our last episode for the first month, we're going to keep going, but this will just be our first month, of course, will be November 16th with Dayan Radic from Near Intent. So I actually became very good friends with Dayan, at Stellar Meridian. He's such a brilliant guy. We had a conversation following his presentation for Near Intense, and we discovered very quickly that beyond our kind of vision in terms of blockchain, our thoughts on, you know, some political things, our thoughts about like life and just existence. It's pretty amazing, like some of the discussions we had and how well aligned we were on so many things. So beyond talking about Near Intense, Near Protocol, and how exciting that is, I'm just excited to have a discussion with this guy. He's great. And that'll be a nice kind of like wrap up for our first 4 episodes essentially. But yeah, like I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And you know, of course, I hope people will be able to attend and I'll be able to take questions from the audience and all that stuff. That's always great. But, you know, if the timing is ever prohibitive, you can always catch a recording of the episode with BitcoinliveDB and reshare with DeOrganizedMedia. And you know, we'll be posting some stuff on our own YouTube page as well for our project, DeFi Expectations. And I'll be chopping up clips like I always do. And
we'll share them out.
Yes, and we'll make sure we get the word out and people can kind of see what we're talking about, what we're trying to build here. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Sounds very exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I had a really great time today. A really nice conversation. I knew it would be fun. I didn't prepare. You know, I like these conversations the best. Like, you know, just jiving and.
Sometimes it's best to not prepare. Like I got here to Berlin. I had so much to do this week. I was a little bit nervous and I was like, yeah, hell with it. You know, actually when I'm unprepared, it's usually best. And I thought we had a great conversation. So
absolutely. Yeah, and I want to thank you, of course, Fry, but also Steve from DeOrganizedMedia and Johnnylaw of DigiByte for hanging out with us and sharing their knowledge and insights and vision. And yeah, I think we're all on the same page. And let's decentralize as much as possible and make freedom win out, right? I think the more freedom we get, the better.
Long live fucking freedom, damn it, right? Isn't that what it says?
That's absolutely right.
Viva
That's
la libertad, carajo, right?
Yeah, I think freedom comes first, and then you know, equality follows, right? Because if you put it the other way around, it won't work. You will lose freedom.
Yes.
So you can equality of opportunities and then maximum freedom. That's the best thing for everyone. So Fry, again, thank you very much. Looking forward to the shows. And I think we have to wrap it up. And thank everybody for watching. Also thank our sponsors, Shieldfolio, and our partners, Quantum Economics and Quantum Expeditions, for mining those off-grid assets through flare gassing, or gassed flared, I should say. And all the other great stuff that they're doing. And yeah, that was about it, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. It was a great talk today.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye.